Today's daf is daf Ted Zion, and on the bottom of the previous Amud, we had a brisa Tesvav Amud Beis that derived the conclusion from the pasuk Mina Afar Shayir that there could be a mesakin bachutz umachnis, and he could prepare that dirt, the earth, outside the heichal and bring it into the heichal and bekarka mishkan. So Isi ben Yehuda is quoted as saying lahavi karka. And which karka? And now we go to the list of Bati Mikdashos, starting with Shiloh, Nov, the Givon, Ubeis Olom. So Yoshua conquers the land during 14 years, and he sets up a Mishkan in Shiloh, which was there for 369 years, until it was destroyed by the Plishtim, and then a replacement Mishkan was set up in Nov, and then again, when that one was destroyed by our enemies, in Givon. And finally, we have the Beis Olomim in Yerushalayim. And the reason why the Beis Hamikdash is called Beis Olomim is because it generated an Isur Hakrava V'Bamos Li'olam. Now the Mishkan in Shiloh had its own uniqueness, and although there were Mishkanos elsewhere, and they had what's called a roof of Urios, however, the Mishkan in the Midbar was moved from place to place. So it was made of wooden beams that were detachable. The one in Shiloh was a stone structure, as the Mishnah establishes it in Masechet Zvachim, Daf Kuf Yud Beis. So when the Torah speaks of taking earth for the Sotah, the Ashkas Sotah from the Mishkan, right? What was the language of the Torah? Bekarka Mishkan. So the word Mishkan usually implies some sort of a temporary structure, and the Sotah L'chora could not be given to drink in the more permanent structure of Shiloh, and certainly not in the Beis Olomim. And we would have a Havamina as well, that the Sotah could not be given to drink in Nov and Givon, because although these Mishkanos were in fact temporary, like the Midbar, and therefore they have the status of a Mishkan, nevertheless they did not have the same Kedusha, because there was no Aron Habris, neither in Nov nor in Givon. But now we have the extra word Karka, and that's going to teach us that you can even be Mashkes Sotah in Shiloh, in Nov and Givon, and in the Beis Olomim. Isi b'menachem omer eno tzarech. I don't need a special ribui to include the Beis Olomim. Uma betuma kala lo cholak hakosuv. In the case of a tuma kala, let's say a person is tamei, let's say he enters into the Mishkan or the Mikdash when he's tamei, and that's called a tumakala, because he's only chayv karis and not misa's bezdin. And the Torah does not distinguish lo chalak hakasu between Mishkan and Beis Olomim. so that we have in Bamidbar Perek Yutes, and this is Rashi based on the Gemara in Shavuos Yud Zayin, a separate verse, a separate limud, and Yalfusa that prohibits entry into each location is Betumas Eishes Ish Chamura Lo Kolshkin, because relative to entering to the Mikdash while Yitami, which is only a Chiv Kares, Eishes Ish is a Tuma that's generous. That is a Chiv Mises Bezdin for Eishes Ish. And certainly we would equate the Beis Olamim with the Mishkan as far as Bedikas Sotah is concerned. Im Kain Matam Lo Bekarka Mishkan. So now, according to this Kavul Chomer of Isi ben Yehuda, we find that the words Bekarka Mishkan are now superfluous. Shlo Yovi Mitoch Kupasa. He's not allowed to take the dirt from outside the Beis Hamikdash in a box. That's called kupaso. And put it into a kli, and then bring it in to the heichal to use it for bedikas sotah. You must take the earth from the floor of the heichal, and if there's no earth, then he brings earth from the outside, places it into the floor of the heichal, and only then can he use it for bedikas sotah. Iboilu. Ain't sham offer ma'olitein efer. What's the status of efer? We have this issue with regard to kisui adam, which requires offer, and the question is, can you do kisui adam with efer, with ashes, in event that there's no offer available? And that's machlokes Beis Hillel Beit Shammai. I'll leave it Beit Shammai lo tiboy lecha diamri lo matzinu efer shekari offer. Beit Shammai holds that Efer is not a substitute for Ofar. When the Torah requires Ofar, earth, it does not include ashes. Kiti boilecha aliba de Beis Hillel the Amri, according to Beis Hillel Shita, that Matzinu Efer Shekori Ofar. That in the parsha of Kisei Adam, for Ophos and Chayos, we find that the Torah says that Efer could be used to replace Ofar. And second, where's the Pasuk? In Bamidbar Yutes, the pasuk says, "V'lakhu latome me'afar sreifas achatos." So in that parsha, the Torah used the word afar, which is earth, and it says Sreifas Achatos. So the term offer is used in this pasuk for ashes. So again, even though we need ashes, but the Torah uses the word offer. So Beis Hillel derives the conclusion that whenever the Torah requires offer, you could use efer, because the Torah uses those two terms interchangeably. Whereas Beit Shammai holds that it says afar sreifa. So when it says afar sreifa, then offer can refer to ashes, to efer. But whenever it says the word offer alone, it refers specifically to offer and not to ashes. So therefore, the Gemara is decided to say that Afal Gav Dikri offer, even though Beis Hillel will find that offer and afer are interchangeable, but here, Hacha, in the case of Ashkas Sotah, where the Torah says Bekarka Mishkan Ksiv, and therefore that extra pasuk Bekarka Mishkan is going to teach me a miut to be mamait afer. So the pasuk of Karka Mishkan is coming to teach us that only something that's similar to the floor of the Mishkan, the Karka Mishkan, can be used for Sotah, and that's earth, but not ashes. O Dilma, perhaps. Hi Bekarka Mishkan, L'Kiri Isi ben Yehuda, U'Kiri Isi ben Menachem Hudiyosi. Maybe Bekarka Mishkan is not superfluous, and therefore would not serve as a miut, but rather we need Bekarka Mishpan to teach me the halacha of Isi ben Yehuda. Isi ben Yehuda had been quoted earlier, and he darshan in the Brisa from Karka Mishkan to include Karka Shiloh, Nov, Givon, and Beis Holomen, that even in those places they were mashkes sotos, or Isi ben Menachem, who darshan from this pasuk in that Brisa that he should not bring offer from outside and place it immediately into the water, but first menicho kodem bekarka mishkan, and after Shah, then he could put it into the water. So therefore, Afer would be kosher, fashkas sota, according to Beis Hillel, that Afer is called Ofa. Tashma, Diom Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum, Rabbi Shmuel, B'shloshim Mekovos Halacha Okeves Mikra. So Halacha Moshe Sinai undermines the Pshuto Shel Mikra in three cases. What are those three cases? Number one, Kisi Adam, HaTorah Omra B'Ofar. The Torah says, V'shafaches damo v'kiso b'Ofar. V'halacha b'chol davar, the halacha Moshe Sinai is oker the Mikra. It undermines the interpretation of the verse itself. And you can use anything that's Magadol Tzmachim for Kisi Adam. Anything in which plants can grow, such as lime, orpiment, ground, earthenware, crushed bricks. The halacha b'chol davar. Number two, the Isser of Giluach Seir for Nazir, Shatorah Omra Bitar. The Pasuk says, Kol Yimei Neder Nizro Tar Lo Yavar Al Rosho. V'Halacha Moshe Sinai is Oker the Mikra and B'chol davar. So that means that the din of Nazir applies with a zug, a tar, a sifsas, and it means he rips it out with his hand. In all these cases, he's chayav. And finally, the third case is a get krisus, shatora omra sefer. And sefer means a cloth, a parchment. And v'kosav lo sefer krisus v'nasim biyado. But haloch l'moshe misinai is oker, it undermines the mikra, and b'chol dov. So you could write a get on an ola shel zayis, al niyar, al luach, and it's kosher. The Isa, if we're going to say, according to one side in our suffix, that Efer can be used for Ashkas Sotah, Lichoshev Nami Hai, Rabbi Yishmael should have included in this list of Halacha Moshe Misina Okeves, Mikra, even the Halacha of Ashkas Sotah. The Torah says that he has to use Ofar, and Halacha Moshe Misina says that he can use even Efer. And the Gemara rejects this. He can't prove from the omission of Rabbi Shmuel because, right? Why didn't Rabbi Shmuel mention that Efer is kosher l'ashkas sotah? Because Tana v'shir. He did not give a total exhaustive list. My shir dahai shir, but whenever we apply the principle of Tana v'shir, we look for another example of shir. Shir mitzora. And he left out mitzora. And that's what's called tiglachos shniyah. The mitzora needs two tiglachos, one on Yom Rishon l'taraso, and the second one on Yom Shvi l'taraso. And with regard to Yom Rishon l'taraso, the Torah says, v'gilach es kol siaro, v'rochatz b'mayim, v'yoshem b'chutz li'olo shivas yomim, v'yikra yudalid. And it means that he's megaleach kol gufo. That includes ro'osa of his arms and shokov in his thighs, ubeis hashechi in his underarms. She kol gufo chalak kid telas. Should be smooth like a gourd. On Yom HaShvi, we have a klal pratu klal. It says, V'yim b'Yom HaShvi galeches kol siaro. And then we have es rosho veskono veskabo seinu veskol siaro. And then again a klal veskol siaro yigaleach. So we have a principle of klal pratu klal, and the prat here limited to what we call makom kinus seor, where the hair is gathered together, and not seor zroosav v'shokov she'ena mechunos. Also, it implies that you need what's called giluach of seor hanira, v'lo seor beis hashechi, underarms she'ena nira, the sanya. And the Brisa says with regard to the second tiglachas mitzvah at the end of the 7 days, v'yom hashvi yigalach es kol siaro, klal, es roshav es konav es gavos einov prat, es kol siaro yigalach chazav v'kol klat pral uklal, iatadon elkena prat. So as far as mitzvah is concerned, ma prat mefurash makom kinus seir v'chein nireh, is af kol makom kinus seir v'nireh, more Rabbi. So what's included through this klal pratu klal? Rabbi sar haraglayim, which is the pubic hairs, beis ha'erva, and my miet beis hashechi udekule gufe. So the hair of his armpits, which is not a makom goli v'nireh, and the seir of kol gufa, which is not mekuvatz umechunas b'makom echad, the mitzvah is not chayev to be megaleh. That's as far as klal pratu klal. However, the hilchasa, we have halacha Moshe Sinai that is okeves es hamikra megaleach kidlas, that he has to shave off all the hairs on his body. The snan. We have a Mishnah in the 14th parak of Negoim. Bolo, the Kohen comes lahakif, means l'galeach es hamitzora, mavir tair al kol b'sara. Uktani seifa, u'biyom hashvi megalcho tiglachas shnei k'tiglachas rishona. So we see that the halacha undermines the mikra of klal pratu klal, even as far as mitzvah is concerned, and yet it was left out by Rabbi Shmuel. So we could say the same thing as far as Hashkas Sotah is concerned, that halacha is okeves mikra, and Rabbi Shmuel was Meshayir this halacha as well. So now we're back to our original suffix, whether Efer would be a valid substitute for offer for Hashkas Sotah. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Kika Chashiv halacha okeves mikra. We only apply Rabbi Shmuel's principle that halacha Moshe Sinai undermines the simple, straightforward interpretation of the pasuk, like in the case of Ofar or Tar or Sefer, but in the case of Mitzor b'teklach hashniya okeves midrabanan. It's not being okev an explicit pasuk, but rather a drush of chacham of klal pratu klal. So we see that anything that's derived from a klal pratu klal is midrabanan. And that is the Rambam's opinion in Shorish Hasheni and Sefer HaMitzvos. The Ramban disagrees. Okay then. So now we have Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's dechia that the case of Mitzorah would not be a valid case to fit into Rabbi Shmuel's principle, and therefore there's no ton of a shear here. And therefore we should derive the conclusion from the omission of the use of Efer for Hashkas Sotah that in fact this would not be an example of halacha okeres mikra. Rav Papa Amar, another way of rejecting this proof, is Kika Chavr, when Rabbi Shmuel calculates solely halacha okeres ve'okeres. But in the case of Tiglach Hashniya, it's not being okeres as hakosav el okeres umosefesi. The halach is only expanding that which it says in the Torah. That in addition to those makomos that require giluach, the halach Moshe Sinai expands it to tell you that his entire body requires giluach kitalas. So once again, according to Rav Papa, we have another rejection of the Tanav Ashir of Mitzorah, and then we're back to our proof from the omission of Efer as a substitute for Ofar, as another example of halacha okeves mikra. Why was it omitted? And now we have a third dechia, a third rejection, Rav Ashi Omar, that which we learned in the 14th chapter of the Goyim, that the Mitzorah needs Tiglach Hashniya ki Tiglach Rishon L'Galech is called Gufo. That's not based on halacha Moshe Sinai being okeves as mikra, but rather the Mishnah is rejecting that which we saw in the earlier brisa that we quoted. The brisa says that from the pasuk it seems that Tiglach Hashniya does not require giluach except for makom kinus v'nira. The Mishnah says that we should derive from the pasuk itself that even Tiglach Hashniya requires giluach as kol gufa, because hamasnisa mani Rabbi Yishmael the brisa that holds that Mitzorah and Tiglach Hashniya should only be megalech makom kinus seir v'nira. That reflects the sheet of Rabbi Yishmael, the Darish klole uprati. Okay. Now, what does that mean, klole uprati? Kishi yesh lefanenu mikra shebetchilaso yesh lashon avadaber v'ofen klole. Shemashma'uso l'ravos hakol. Liachrav yesh lashon avadaber v'ofen prati. Shemashma'uso rak Dover zeh hamafurish bekasu kavanas haTorah sheyesh bechlal ma sheyesh beprat v'aprat memait is called dvarim chutz me'aprat atzmo Mishum shaprat hu pirusho shal haklal, ukshosifa Torah v'kosva klal. That means after the prat, the Torah adds a klal. Kavanas haTorah l'Ravas is called dvarim shem ke'ena prat. Im kein af tiglachas mitzora shator kosva b'klal pratu klal kavanas shenarbe chak ke'ena prat dahainu makom kinus v'seyor v'nira. So that's the brisa that holds that mitzora in tiglachas shnia is megalech only makom kinus seir and venira. That reflects the shita of Rabbi Yishmael. And now we're going to get to the Mishnah in the Goy.